Gabor Maté, in the realm of hungry ghosts, close encounters with addiction. Dive into the illuminating world of addiction with Gabor Maté, in the realm of hungry ghosts. This compelling exploration unveils the raw and often heart-wrenching realities of addiction, backed by scientific insights and personal narratives. The book sheds light on addicts from all walks of life, from the destitute in Vancouver's East Side to accomplished figures like Sigmund Freud. What sets this narrative apart is its profound focus on the intricate dance between biology, environment, and personal trauma in fostering addiction. Maté argues that addiction is not simply a choice but a complex condition heavily influenced by early childhood experiences and socio-political factors. Readers will also encounter a critique of the war on drugs, advocating for compassionate approaches rather than punitive measures. Prepare to challenge preconceived notions and discover how understanding and empathy can pave the way to recovery.
Understanding addiction. Addiction wears many faces. Take Serena, for instance. At just over 30, she calls Vancouver's downtown East Side home, battling a narcotic addiction that she's known since her teenage years. Her journey began even earlier, scarred by years of sexual abuse from family members. In the midst of chaos, places like the Portland Hotel Society offer a semblance of refuge. Here, addicts receive not just basic necessities and medical care, but also a non-judgmental space to heal through activities like poetry readings and movie nights. Within this haven, individuals like Claire, despite their struggles, find acceptance. Claire's volatile outbursts exclude her from certain areas, yet beneath her turmoil lies a deep yearning for connection. Yet addiction doesn't just touch those in dire circumstances, it knows no boundaries. Even figures like Sigmund Freud and William Stewart Halsted struggled with their addictions. Freud, a brilliant psychologist, had a known history with cocaine. Halsted, who revolutionized surgery, battled opiate dependency for decades. Interestingly, addiction can also manifest in subtler ways. Consider Dr. Gabor Maté, passionately devoted to his work with addicts but ensnared by his own obsession, classical music. For Maté, this is far more than a hobby. Despite living in a comfortable home and devoid of substance abuse issues, he exhibits addiction's telltale signs. In a frenzy, he poured $2,000 into acquiring CDs in just over a month, hiding them in the shame of excess he promised to curb. His compulsive need for music saturates every moment, overshadowing tasks and threatening his personal commitments. Addiction, as Maté unravels through story, transcends stereotypes, inviting deeper reflection on what it truly means to be an addict. The brain's dependency trap. Imagine a symphony of melodies that stirs the soul yet chains the heart. This is the paradox Dr. Maté lives with, where his love for music turns into a relentless addiction. Just like any intense passion, when unchecked, this fervor can easily morph into a consuming addiction that overshadows personal relationships and professional duties. At its core, addiction isn't merely about an uncontrollable obsession, it's a complex interplay of biological, emotional, and social factors, intricately woven into the brain's fabric. Dopamine, often dubbed the feel-good chemical, is at the heart of this phenomenon. It regulates our motivation, rewards us with feelings of elation, and drives our actions. Stimulants like cocaine amplify dopamine's effects, binding to brain receptors and altering our mood. However, frequent use damages these receptors, compelling the brain to seek even more external stimuli to recapture that euphoria. This initiates a cycle where addicts increasingly depend on substances just to feel normal, their lives narrowing down to fulfilling this craving alone. As addiction deepens, it alters crucial areas of the brain, like the orbitofrontal cortex, which is crucial for impulse control and decision-making. This disruption means that addicts often trade long-term well-being for fleeting highs, making choices that perpetuate their dependence. Such profound changes call for a reassessment of the simplistic notion that addiction is merely a choice. If a physical ailment like arthritis shields its sufferers from blame, how can we fault addicts whose brain functions are significantly impaired by their condition? Indeed, the initial choice to use a substance lies with the individual, perhaps as naively as picking up a book to read. Yet, beyond that first encounter, addiction seizes control, leaving the brain craving more while compromising its ability to choose otherwise. Understanding this process encourages a shift towards empathy, recognizing addiction not just as a failing of willpower but as a chronic, debilitating condition that requires compassion and support. Roots of addiction. Imagine if addiction wasn't about the substances themselves but the trenches of early life experiences. That's the perspective offered by Harvard psychiatrist Lance Dodds, whose insights reveal that addiction doesn't reside in drugs but within people. If drugs inherently caused addiction, then anyone given painkillers like morphine would, without fail, become addicted. Yet, that's not what happens, and the key to understanding why lies in our environment, especially during those formative years from the womb onward. It all begins before a child even takes their first breath. When a mother encounters high stress during pregnancy, this floods the developing fetus with cortisol, a stress hormone that can damage brain structures linked to addiction. Once born, a child's brain, teeming with an abundance of neurons and connections, starts to carve itself based on the experiences it absorbs. Children nurtured in stable, loving environments usually develop robust brain structures. Conversely, when a child lacks consistent, secure interactions, their brain development can go awry. Even a brief separation from a mother can drastically alter neurotransmitter systems like dopamine, which play a crucial role in mood regulation. Children are astute observers of emotional cues, picking up on even the subtlest hints of disconnection, such as a tense grip or shifts in vocal tones. These signs create stress, which changes the landscape of the child's brain, affecting opiate and dopamine receptors and potentially planting seeds for addiction. The journey often starts with early childhood trauma. The Pivotal Adverse Childhood Experiences (ACE) study highlighted how traumatic events double to quadruple the risk of early substance abuse. This doesn't only apply to those with severe addiction. Behavioral dependencies, like those explored by Dr. Maté, also stem from these early disruptions. While extreme childhood trauma may culminate in severe addiction, even milder disruptions can lead to less intense forms of addiction, whether substance-related or behavioral. It's a rare individual who can confidently claim to be entirely free from addiction in one form or another. This exploration invites us to consider addiction not as a moral failing but as a deeply ingrained response etched into our neural pathways by the environment in which we first take root. Rethinking drug policies. Imagine fighting addiction by just saying no. This oversimplified mantra has been at the core of the war on drugs, a series of policies that, while intending to curb drug use through severe punishments, have led to rather tragic outcomes. The harsh reality is, these measures have not only failed to prevent drug use but have also resulted in excess incarcerations, fractured families, increased street violence, political instability, and public health crises. Statistics paint a grim picture. American high school seniors' daily marijuana use more than doubled between the 1990s and mid-2000s, as did drug overdose deaths among 15 to 24-year-olds between 1999 and 2005. These policies turned addicts, who are often coping with significant personal loss and trauma, into criminals by default. Stripped of better options, many resort to violence, prostitution, and scams to survive. The core issue is the failure to address the root causes of addiction. Addicts face devastating consequences, job losses, family disruptions, and the deaths of close friends, yet these aren't enough to overcome their struggles. To genuinely assist recovery, we need to consider decriminalizing all substances. By removing legal penalties for personal drug possession, we can create a system where medically supervised provision of substances is possible. Decriminalization offers a pragmatic approach. Addicts could access their substances safely under medical supervision, minimizing infection and overdose risks while providing meaningful healthcare access. This shift would effectively dampen crime and social issues like violence, poverty, and prostitution. Additionally, integrating addicts into a supportive healthcare system might gradually lead them towards rehabilitation. Absent this substantial reform, a focus on harm reduction emerges as an interim solution. Harm reduction doesn't aim to cure addiction but to alleviate its destructive effects. Programs may include supervised substance use and needle exchanges. These measures, exchanging used syringes for sterile ones, significantly reduce the spread of diseases like HIV and hepatitis C. While harm reduction doesn't address addiction itself, it seeks to mitigate the deadly, miserable conditions faced by addicts within the current framework. In essence, proactive efforts toward decriminalization and harm reduction could pave the way for more compassionate, effective strategies in tackling addiction and its surrounding social issues. Compassionate curiosity in addiction. Battling addiction is often described using warlike metaphors, suggesting a conflict within oneself. However, this approach can foster self-hatred rather than healing. Instead, consider replacing harsh judgments with compassionate curiosity. For example, instead of chastising yourself with thoughts like, "I'm so stupid, why can't I just learn?" try asking, "Why did I do this again, despite knowing the consequences?" This open-minded self-inquiry does not demand happiness about one's actions but encourages understanding. Dr. Maté, who felt compelled to always have a book to avoid being alone with his thoughts, found that examining this behavior diminished his need to escape. His story illustrates how understanding the reasons behind addictive behaviors can lead to personal insights, even if it doesn't eradicate the need entirely. For those close to someone dealing with addiction, it's crucial to recognize that change cannot be externally imposed. The drive for transformation must come from the individual grappling with the addiction. As a friend, family member, or partner, you might face a choice, whether to stay with the addict or not. Acceptance doesn't mean unconditional tolerance for broken promises or self-neglect, it's about understanding your own limits and boundaries. If you choose to stay, it's important to realize that critiques often reflect more on you than the addict. Rather than critiquing an alcoholic husband, a wife might reflect on her own struggles with self-righteousness. She could express progress in her self-reflection journey, which in turn invites her husband to share his feelings. This approach nurtures healthier relationships by fostering honest, non-judgmental dialogue. True change begins when interactions drop self-righteousness and become invitations for mutual understanding. Recognizing the reasons behind the addiction acknowledges the experience of the person struggling, highlighting that these choices may have served a purpose in their life. This shift from judgment to compassionate curiosity creates a foundation for healing and connection.
To wrap up, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts leaves us with a transformative perspective on addiction. Gabor Maté's work encourages a paradigm shift from condemnation to compassionate curiosity, both for individuals grappling with addiction and their loved ones. The key takeaways hinge on the understanding that addiction stems from deep-seated psychological wounds and societal influences, urging a re-evaluation of harsh drug policies. Mate promotes harm reduction and fostering environments conducive to healing instead of punishment. By recognizing the breadth of addiction, from substance dependency to behavioral obsessions, the book implores us to foster empathy and pursue meaningful connections. Ultimately, Mate challenges the reader to rethink addiction as a human vulnerability needing understanding and support, paving a hopeful path towards recovery and self-discovery for all involved.